All right, folks, thank you for your patience. I think we'll get started here in a moment. All right, this is a fantastic turnout. We've done a number of these sewer project sessions, and we have definitely not filled the room before, so that's great. We're happy to see this type of turnout. My name is Griffin Bowden. I'm the town engineer for the town of Barnstable. We're here this evening to have a discussion about the Phinneys Lane Neighborhood Sewer Expansion Project. A couple of administrative items before we get going. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for future viewing on Barnstable Government Access. It's not live, but it is being recorded. The slides will be posted along with a link to the recording and a project overview video on barnstablewaterresources.com. And please hold any questions till the end of the presentation. We're going to go through a lot of material, and then we will have time for question and answers at the end. We do ask that if you have questions about your specific property, we'll take those questions after the Q&A session. We have a number of plans and a number of staff folks here that can help you about your particular property. These tend to go very long if we start engaging in everybody's particular question about their property. So we'll take generic project questions, and then we'll break off and we'll be able to answer any question you have about your property. All right, so here's an overview of our agenda this evening. We always start our programs with an overview of why we're doing this. So an overview of the comprehensive wastewater management plan. What is it? Why are we doing it? What's it looking to achieve, et cetera. And then we'll go into some details on the project specifics. Well, then I'll turn the mic over to Kelly, our communications manager, and she'll go over our communications plans and how we communicate updates and the project details to the public. And we will then also have an overview of the sewer connection process. And again, questions will be taken at the end, and then we'll also have a kind of a workshop in the back to answer questions about your property. So what is the CWMP? This is by no means an official definition, but this is my definition, I would say. It's a planning document that's required by regulatory agencies which identifies the town's wastewater needs and establishes a recommended plan for resolving them. The Barnstable CWMP was regulatorily approved in April 2021. It's a 30-year plan, and we're currently in year 5 of that plan. What are the general problems the plan is looking to address? Well, the largest is a regulatory issue, which is impaired coastal waters, principally from excess nitrogen entering the coastal embayments. But there are a number of other issues we're looking to address with this plan, which are very relevant to this project, actually. Groundwater quality concerns. Our groundwater is our drinking water source. Pond water quality concerns. Flood zone and climate change. Promoting targeted economic development in certain areas of the plan. And addressing regulatory requirements. So nitrogen pollution in Barnstable. The nitrogen pollution issue has been understood for a couple decades at this point. It was documented by the Massachusetts Estuaries Project in the early 2000s, where they studied each embayment system in southeastern Massachusetts and basically developed a land use model which identified the excess nitrogen that's entering the embayments and the reasons why the embayments were being impaired by this nitrogen. The town must meet federally required total maximum daily loads. These are effectively nitrogen budgets within those water bodies. So the ultimate goal of the CWMP is to reduce the nitrogen entering and within the embayment systems to below these total maximum daily loads, which basically represent what a healthy ecosystem can support. 78% of controllable nitrogen entering the environment on Cape Cod is from septic systems, which is why we talk about wastewater when trying to deal with this issue. That's the biggest way to deal with this problem. Current Title V systems are not designed to remove significant nitrogen, so a lot of people will say, I have a perfectly good Title V system. They ultimately don't remove nitrogen in any significant way, and as a result, they're not helping address the problem that we're having in our embayment systems. And innovative alternative septic systems, which you may have heard of, are septic systems that are designed to remove additional nitrogen or other materials from the wastewater Current technologies don't remove enough nitrogen to achieve the TMDLs in our embayments, so they're not necessarily a tool that we can utilize to remove all of the nitrogen that needs to be removed. Sewering is ultimately a necessary portion, is a necessary requirement within the community to achieve the TMDLs. And on the left is just a chart. It actually comes from the Cape Cod Commission. It's a pie chart kind of showing the controllable nitrogen entering the water bodies on Cape Cod, and you can see in that kind of aqua color the septic systems are by far the largest controllable source of nitrogen. So what is Barnstable's plan? Probably heard by now, it's a 30-year plan, 3 10-year phases. It includes about 190 miles of new sewers being installed across the community. A little under 12,000 properties are identified to be connected to the new sewer. It's executed in 3 phases, but each phase is broken out into multiple smaller projects. This project being one of the smaller projects in phase 1 of our program. This actually is the 5th major sewer expansion within phase 1 of our program. It leverages existing infrastructure to the maximum extent possible. We're fortunate that we have a wastewater treatment plant already in town, which is a major asset for us in this endeavor. We also have existing sewers, principally in the eastern side of the town, which we're leveraging to minimize costs. It also incorporates non-traditional projects such as dredging and aquaculture and innovative alternative septic systems, but doesn't necessarily rely on them. And the plan's core is a principle of adaptive management. The plan needs to be flexible so that we can adapt to changing conditions in the community, whether it be an opportunity to install sewers at a more cost-effective way or changing technologies. And as such, we are required to prepare a 5-year adaptive management update every year and submit it to the regulatory agencies. We're actually in the process of preparing that first one now. But ultimately, it's intended to be a flexible plan. We do submit annual updates each year to the Cape Cod Commission, and they can be found on our website, which documents basically the updates each year and the progress that occurs. And ultimately, our plan achieves the TMDLs. So what does the plan look like? This is the map of our phasing plan. So you have various colors here. The red color is phase 1 of our plan, the first 10 years. The green color is phase 2, the second 10 years. And the yellow color is phase 3, ultimately the third 10-year phase. There's also a couple of other colors you'll see out in the kind of western part of town in the Cotuit area. We call those our stages. They don't have a time associated with them at the moment. That will likely change in the near future, but at the development of the plan, they didn't have a time associated with them, given principally because of their distance from Hyannis. So as I noted, each phase is broken up into multiple smaller projects. So this is kind of a zooming in into that phase 1 red area that we had here. This zooms into that area, and each different color is a different project. The project we're talking about this evening is this pink area here. But this on the right here kind of shows each project's names and the various statuses. So we have a number of projects, a couple projects that have been completed, a couple projects that are under construction, a couple projects that are about to go out to bid, and a number of projects that are in active design. All right, so the project we're talking about this evening, the Phinneys Lane Sewer Expansion Project. The area in green are the parcels that are identified to connect as part of this project. Ultimately, the goal of this project is to expand sewer into the residential neighborhoods on the east and west side of Phinneys Lane. We also view this as, we discuss this internally anyway, as our first neighborhood project. To date, we've been installing sewers all throughout town, but they've been on primarily main roads as part of this program. So you all, saw us work on Phinneys Lane, and we're currently working on Shoot Flying Hill Road, and we're working on 28 at night. But this is the first kind of project that comes into the neighborhoods, which is a big milestone for us, because ultimately by the number of people here, you can see there's a lot of people that are ultimately going to be connecting to this project, which ultimately starts to address the issue we're looking to achieve, which is having homes connect, taking their septic systems out and connecting them to the wastewater treatment plant, which ultimately removes nitrogen from the environment. So an overview of the project, there's 8 miles of new sewers that will be installed as part of the project. There's about 560 parcels, individual properties that will be connected. Removes about 8.4 kilograms per day of nitrogen from various watersheds. That's quite a bit. This is actually our largest project that we have identified currently by number of parcels that will be connecting to the project. So this is a large project. There are 53 total roads. I won't read every one of them, but they're also on your handout. So there are a large amount of roads that will be impacted by this program. All right, so an overview of the sewer design. The project includes mostly gravity sewers. I'll explain that a little bit further in a moment. The various colors on the left indicate anticipated sewer connection methods. We have visuals in the back. You can take a look at those at the end to view your individual property. But ultimately, gravity sewers are not feasible in some portions of the project for various reasons. Some may be topography, narrow roadways, technical challenges, properties that are actually lower than the roadway. And in these cases, we do have to design the property's connection under the assumption that a grinder pump will be needed to pump up to the new sewers. So a little 101. How does a sewer system work, right? I like to view a sewer system as an extension of your plumbing. That's frankly what it is. These are how gravity sewers work. So each home has their wastewater go through its plumbing and it goes out of your basement, right? Currently it goes out into your septic system and goes into the ground. When a new sewer comes along, we put this pipe in the roadway, which we try to put with a slope down so that it flows by gravity. And we try to design these such that the pipe leaving your house can flow by gravity into this pipe. That's the ideal scenario. It's not always achievable. When this occurs, they ultimately flow to a low point. Typically, at that low point is a sewer pump station, which is an area where we would collect the wastewater and then we would pump it to usually our wastewater treatment plant or another area in the collection system. And then it flows under pressure to that point. So this is how a traditional gravity sewer system would work. There are 2 kind of scenarios by which what we would call a grinder pump connection would occur. Scenario 1 would be a scenario where your connection point is ultimately lower than the roadway or lower than the gravity sewer, right? So in this case, there's a road that's high and there's a couple houses that are low-lying, and the pipe under the roadway is actually higher than the pipe coming out of the building. In that case, there's really nothing we can do about it. We are going to have a pump on the property that would pump the wastewater from your house into the gravity sewer. The second scenario is what we call a low-pressure sewer system, which is when, for any number of reasons, the pipe within the roadway is designed under pressure. Typically, this would be because the road's kind of doing a lot of up and downs, and we aren't able to have a pipe slope naturally to a low point, or we couldn't site a pump station in a location because there was not a piece of land that we owned or a piece of land we were able to install that piece of infrastructure on. But for any number of reasons, in this scenario, we've installed a pipe in the road that is under pressure. Every property that connects to that pipe would need to have a grinder pump installed on their property to connect to that. So I just mentioned municipal pump stations. There is one pump station in this project. It's actually kind of away from the Phinneys Lane area, but I'll get to in a moment why it actually is part of this project. So this is actually located on Route 28, right over here actually. Right at the corner of this property is where the proposed relocation is. And there's an existing pump station that's been there since 1989. And it's ultimately coming to the end of its useful life. It's beyond it's approaching its capacity, and it really can't accept any additional flow. The design of the Phinneys Lane project, however, will send more flow to it. As I mentioned earlier, we are looking to leverage existing assets. This is an existing asset and some existing sewers that we're able to leverage to keep the cost down. However, we had to replace this pump station anyway, so it was incorporated into the project to do so. The existing location where the pump station is located on a very small easement that the town acquired in the late 1980s on 4 Marks Path, so just east of Marks Path, a little bit up the road from here. It's very small and creates logistical challenges for operation and maintenance, as well as real technical logistical challenges when we go to replace it. So we reviewed a number of alternatives and ultimately landed on siting the new pump station kind of on the corner of the property over here, and I'll show you in a moment where it is and what it'll look like. So this is the existing pump station. Again, right up the street on the south side of 28. It's kind of hidden behind a fence here, and it's kind of hard to tell in this picture, but there's a significant slope down, and this is the bike path. And so our staff, when they go to maintain this pump station, has to drive down the bike path with their truck and get in there, and there's really not a good way to get in and access this station. And also it creates challenges when we have to dig this out and ultimately put a new one in. There's really no place to do all that. I alluded to this earlier, so it might be hard to see in the back especially, but the gray area with all these pink lines, these are the existing parcels that are actually served by this piece of infrastructure already. The pink parcels are the parcels in the Phinneys Lane project that are going to also be served by this piece of infrastructure. So there's about 120 properties that are going to this asset that are going to exacerbate that need for a capacity upgrade, and ultimately is the reason why we need to replace this station. So here's a quick site plan. It just kind of shows how the site will lay out. This is Route 28. This is Marks Path. This is, again, the corner of the property here over in the woods over down that way. And basically we'll be installing a driveway, and I'll show you what the pump station will look like in a moment, but it's effectively a below-grade vault, which will collect the wastewater and pump it to the wastewater treatment plant. So this is the location where the pump station will ultimately go. And this is a rendering of what it'll look like. So a driveway, this is actually the pump station, and these are some electrical controls. So construction impacts, we always try to be as transparent about this as possible. We've seen construction throughout the community for the projects thus far. These sewer projects are major infrastructure projects. So they require deep excavations to put a pipe in the ground, anywhere from 5 feet deep, all the way down to, in some cases, 26 feet deep. Not a lot of that in this project, but there is one piece of pipe in this project that's 26 feet deep, actually. It does require multiple crews in multiple coordinated work zones. You've kind of seen this out in the main roads. It will be a little different as we move into neighborhoods, where there will likely be a couple of neighborhoods that are having sewers installed at a time. It requires trenching within the roadway, shoulders, and sidewalks. Ultimately, at the end of each working day, there will be temporary uneven road surfaces. There will be the need for road closures and detours and making sure that the public is safe and away from the construction. We do ultimately have to trim some trees above the roadway just to get the equipment in. As you can see, there's large excavators and stuff necessary to do some of this activity. The construction does create noise and vibrations during active construction, and there may be times where fences or landscaping on the shoulders of the roadway are impacted and may even need to be relocated, which we would coordinate with the property owner. So just some quick examples. We come through and we'll start doing trimming and utility markouts. You'll start seeing road closures. You'll see the excavation. And then once the excavation's done, you'll see that temporary paving, which is all bumpy and nobody likes driving down. But then at the end of the day, the road will be completely paved. All roads, including private roads, which there are a number of in this project, will be restored full width upon completion of construction. For most of the roads, that'll be asphalt, but the roads that are gravel, we would expect to put a gravel roadway back, not necessarily upgrade it to a paved road. So what's the anticipated schedule? As of today, we are completing the design of this project. The project is scheduled to go out to bid this spring. The contract will be awarded prior to June 30th of this year, as it needs to be for financing purposes. We would generally have another meeting like this after we've retained a contractor and do some pre-construction outreach. At that time, we would have more certainty of what roads are first, what schedule they're anticipating, and then our follow-up meetings typically go into more detail on that, because ultimately the contractor does set the schedule as to what roads will be installed first. We're looking to commence construction on this project in 2026, this fall, and the target completion for this project is the fall of 2029. We're not anticipating each road's going to have construction for 3 years on it. That's not what this means. Going back to earlier, there are 53 roads in the project. There's not 53 crews to bang it all out in one year, so that's just the time frame that the whole project, all 53 roads, will take to be connected. And again, once we have a contractor that's on board, one of the first things we ask them is, what is the construction sequence? And at that time, we would hold additional outreach sessions to discuss, what roads first, what roads second, what roads in 2026, what roads in 2029, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering that at the moment. We don't have that answer at the moment. We don't have that answer until the contractor's on board. So that's the overview of the project. I'm going to, at this time, turn it over to our communications manager, Kelly Colopy, to discuss our communications and outreach program. Oh, you're going to need this.
Thank you, Griffin. So as Griffin mentioned, my name is Kelly Colopy. I am the communications manager for the Department of Public Works. I'm also joined by our communications assistant, Chris Gadd, who's in the back of the room and will be available to help answer questions at the end of the formal Q&A session if you have individual questions. But I want to take a few minutes this evening to just overview what our communications and outreach plan looks like. It's very robust, as you can see on the screen, and we handle communications in sort of 3 different modes: pre-construction, which is why you're all here this evening, during construction, and then post-construction. So we use a variety of different formats. We've actually put a much larger emphasis more recently over the last year and a half on certified and standard mail. Hopefully many of you are in the room tonight for that exact reason, that you received a mailed notice letting you know that the project meeting was happening. We also will use certified mailing in particular ahead of the start of construction. As Griffin noted, once we have a contractor selected and a schedule has been developed by that contractor, we'll then move forward with an outreach meeting to review the construction schedule. And with that will come a certified mailing that will be sent to your primary mailing address, so whatever address you have listed for your property where you receive your tax information. And that will be a fairly robust packet of information. It will have your formal official notice that you are part of this project, which again, if you're here tonight, we've sort of given you a little precursor, a little preview of that. It'll also include what we call a sewer connection form, which is your opportunity to sort of opine on where the connection point for your property will be. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail when we talk about the sewer connection process, but it's your opportunity to share information about your individual property to help us as we prepare for construction. It'll also include some FAQs and other important information. We'll touch upon this in a moment, but we also have made those documents available in Portuguese and Spanish as well. So that will be really the next mailing that you receive, will be your certified mailer, likely early to mid to late fall, or mid to late summer. Again, once we have that contractor on board and a schedule developed. But we also have a variety of other communication methods. We know that not one size fits all, that we have a very diverse community. So we try to really make sure that we're leveraging our traditional media through media releases and traffic advisories, radio interviews, but also digital media as well. There are 2 newsletters that you can subscribe to. The town has an official Barnstable e-news that goes out on Fridays, town-wide news, but there is a roadwork section in there as well. And then we also have our own Barnstable Water Resources newsletter, and I'll touch upon the website in just a moment. We also have a variety of social media channels, official Town of Barnstable channels, as well as Barnstable Water Resources channels. And then I also do post updates on Nextdoor, acting as the communications manager for the Department of Public Works. There's the town website, but also the Barnstable Water Resources website, which is really your one-stop shop for all things sewer construction and general water quality news. And then we have these in-person meetings as well. So we always start with this pre-construction meeting where we review the design of the project. Again, Griffin alluded to that essentially construction meeting ahead of the project breaking ground. We love to reach out to associations. I see some of my homeowner associations here, which is great. Chris and I kind of do a traveling roadshow throughout the summer where we attend a variety of annual meetings and speak about not just the individual sewer construction projects, but overall the why behind the CWMP and why we need this important critical infrastructure. And I also encourage you, we did put surveys on everyone's chair. Hopefully you got one. If you are related to or somehow involved in a homeowner or residential association and you don't mind noting that, please do so, because we obviously have some who have been very proactive and have reached out to us to engage in conversations, but we would love to build a repository of those associations so that we can set up individual meetings with you as the project progresses. Additionally, we'll do door-to-door outreach throughout construction as well. I, for one, live off of Chute Flying Hill Road, so I can attest to the door-to-door outreach and the door hangers, where when we have immediate traffic impacts or a change in a traffic management plan, we'll physically go knock on doors and let you know of potential limited access or a change in how you may need to navigate to or from your property. So we do that door-to-door outreach as well throughout construction as needed. So while tonight's meeting is really about the design of the project, I did want to touch upon the sewer construction process or connection process, because I assume many of you are here with some of those questions. This is a very high-level overview. I'll talk about at the end of my segment here about an upcoming connection workshop that we have, but I wanted to give you an idea of essentially these 8 steps to connecting your property to the municipal sewer system. The homeowner connection guides that you have on your seats take these 8 steps, this one slide, and break it out into 30+ pages of information. So that really is your guide. But at a high level, we're kind of right here, essentially, at that first block, the pre-construction outreach phase. By the end of this summer, ahead of construction, you'll have received your sewer connection form that I mentioned earlier. Then the town sewer construction will occur. That'll occur from 2026 through 2029, as Griffin outlined. At some point, once construction is completed, we've accepted the sewer infrastructure, you'll receive your actual formal notice to connect from the Barnstable Board of Health. So I like to make that distinction, because DPW doesn't actually mandate the sewer connections. There will be a communication from DPW ahead of your formal notification to let you know that the project is quote unquote completed. And we'll also provide you with the contact information for the health department and the finance department so that you're aware of who's going to be reaching out to you next to discuss their portions of the project, i.e. connection, and then also the sewer assessment, which we'll talk about in a moment. So you do not have to formally connect until you receive that notice from the Board of Health. I like to make sure that folks are clear on that, because oftentimes we'll see sewer construction happen in front of our properties, and then immediately you think, I have to connect right now. You'll receive a formal notification, and that notification from the Board of Health will also be sent as a certified mailing. That way we can track that it's been received by the property owner and make sure that we're doing our due diligence to connect and communicate with our property owners. From there, you will hire a licensed sewer installer. In the hand guides that are on your seats, there is an updated list of licensed sewer installers that we have vetted. They have the proper credentials and insurance and are what we consider acceptable to complete sewer connections in our town. That database is updated regularly. We have a digital version that gets updated pretty frequently on the Barnstable Water Resources website, and then we do print updated connection guides on a yearly basis right now, where we include the most recent list of sewer installers. You'll then move into sewer connection on your private property. Griffin touched upon this a little bit when he talked about the various connection scenarios and what that's going to look like for you as a property owner. But you ultimately will retain a contractor who will provide you with a quote and do the sewer construction for you to connect your property to the newly expanded municipal sewer system. There's also an inspection process that is involved in that, in which DPW will have a sewer connection inspector on site to make sure that the connection is being performed to town specifications. You'll also be in charge of abandoning your septic system. Your licensed sewer installer who you retain to complete your connection, more likely than not, can complete that abandonment for you. And right now, the Board of Health, you'll want to consult with them if you have specific questions about septic abandonment. But typically, they've been having folks just abandon them in place, crush, fill them. So it's somewhat less invasive than you may anticipate. But of course, always refer any septic questions to the Health Division. And then once all of that is said and done, we will then note that your sewer service is active and your billing from the Water Pollution Control Facility for your sewer service will begin. This is handled based off of your water usage, and you'll receive that sewer bill at the same frequency in which you receive your water bill. So I know Hyannis has one system, COM has, I think it's biannually that we receive our water bill. So you'll receive your sewer bill at that same increment. And again, it's based on water usage. There may be some opportunities for deduct meters. You'll want to consult with your water purveyor regarding their specific specifications and process for a deduct meter. But those are potentially an option for you to deduct any irrigation water use from your sewer bill. So again, tonight's meeting is not necessarily about sewer connections, but I do want to touch on some of the hot topics and questions we're asked. When we're talking about sewer connection costs, there are essentially 3 costs that each property owner will be responsible for. The first would be your sewer assessment. The sewer assessment is explained in detail in those connection guides that you have, but essentially it was voted on by Town Council in July of 2021 to be capped at $10,000 per sewer unit. Sewer units are your traditional single-family residence. If you have an ADU, there's some additional parameters around that. And we get into a little bit more detail here on the slide, but again, I would refer you to your connection guides. These sewer assessments can be financed through the town tax collector's office. The tax collector will reach out to you with the information about your sewer assessment at the completion of the project, and they will actually ask you, how would you like to pay? Would you like it to be financed across 30 years, across 10 years? Do you want to pay it in full? They'll also provide you with what your final sewer assessment cost is. So again, max of $10,000, but in some cases it could be less. Then there's the sewer connection on private property that I mentioned. That again is mandated by the Barnstable Board of Health. You'll hire a licensed sewer installer. We really encourage property owners to treat this like any other home improvement project that you'd be doing on your property, and do your due diligence. Look at retain some quotes from a number of contractors to make sure that you're getting what you feel is the most effective solution for your property and within your budget. But there are also and just a note too, and I know Griffin likely touched on this, but costs for that sewer connection on private property will vary on a property by property basis. It's very dependent on your individual property characteristics. There are financing options available. The premier option is actually through Barnstable County. It's the Cape Cod Aqua Fund, and they allow financing for up to 20 years. Specifically for new sewer connections that are mandated, which you would be eligible for, or a new sewer connection through this program would be eligible for. They have interest rates of 0% and 2%. There are some additional interest rates. There's also a 4% interest rate loan available for condominium and apartment communities. So again, I just encourage you to refer back to the Homeowners Connection Guide, where we include more information about that program. In your connection guide, you'll also find information about the state tax credit for the sewer connections, as well as information about some of the local financial institutions who have also rolled out their own financial support programs. And then I mentioned utility billing on the previous slide, again, based on your water usage, and will be billed separately through the Water Pollution Control Facility at the same frequency that you receive your current water bill. And then I already sort of teased this, but barnstablewaterresources.com is our standalone website managed by the Department of Public Works, specifically to communicate all of our water resources initiatives. Obviously a major focus on the sewer expansion program and the CWMP, but really a wealth of information. I mean, it truly is a one-stop shop. Almost any question you could possibly have is likely answered, if not on the actual pages themselves within our FAQ section. We've greatly expanded the website to include information about some of the non-traditional solutions as well, if that's something that interests you, as well as our water quality monitoring program and some of our coastal resiliency projects. And then I did allude to this a little bit as well, but we have a number of other ways you can learn more about the program and stay up to date. We have a variety of different videos, educational videos, including a one-on-one sit-down with our sewer connection program manager, available on the Town of Barnstable's YouTube page. And then I mentioned that we also have our own standalone Barnstable Water Resources social media, as well as sharing updates on the Town of Barnstable social media accounts. And then lastly, we do host residential sewer connection workshops on a pretty much quarterly basis at this point. We host them here at the Adult Community Center. They are during the day, but these meetings are recorded. We've got a number of them recorded already. It's generally the same content from each meeting. We go into more detail about all the information that's available in your sewer connection guide, including more details about some of the financial resources available to folks connecting to sewer. But it's just a really great place that if you have some of those individual questions, we really open it up to that one-on-one dialogue and community dialogue so that you're in a comfortable place where you can talk to someone face-to-face about the sewer connection process. So I highly encourage, if you are available, to attend our meeting next week here at 1:30. And if not, feel free to review any of the previous recordings, because again, the information and the content is generally the same meeting to meeting. But it does provide a great opportunity for that in-person, face-to-face conversation as well. And with that, I will, I'm sorry?
Do you register?
You do, yes, you can. That's a great question. So the Adult Community Center meetings, you don't necessarily have to, but if you go on the Barnstable Adult Community Center, there is a place where you can register. They use that information really to help them figure out how many seats to set up in the room, but it's not, we're not going to turn you away if you don't register. And with that, I will turn it back to Griffin for Q&A.
Thank you. And a couple other items we'd be remiss to mention. We did hand out meeting surveys. We'll collect those at the door as folks leave. That information is very valuable to us for establishing contacts, if we need to get a hold of residents during the project, as well as really understanding how our communications are working, how we're reaching folks, what we're communicating well, what we're not communicating well, right? In addition, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the staff we have here. Kelly and I are not the only ones involved in this very large endeavor. We have a number of staff that are involved in this project, and a few are here with us in the back. We have our consulting engineer, which is from Weston and Sampson, is the design engineer for this project. Second to the right is Mike Paulin in the blue shirt. He's the project manager from Weston Sampson. And on the left is Maria Avalar. She is one of the project engineers on the project who lives here in Hyannis. We consider them an extension of our team. We've worked with them on a number of projects, and they've been fantastic for us. On the right is Miroslav Jakubica. He is one of our senior project managers that works at DPW. Very talented designer. In the middle is Nick Cleaney. He's one of our very talented project engineers that we have working for us. And on second from the left in the white shirt is Tyler Gilman. He is our other senior project manager who manages the construction of these projects. So once this project goes to construction, he'll kind of be the guy in charge, leading the way, working with the contractor to get this project implemented. In addition, I think Kelly mentioned Chris Gadd. Chris Gadd's our communications assistant. He's the one that pulled this all together tonight, so I will give him a lot of credit for this. With that, again, we'll take questions. If you have questions about your individual property, it'll be a lot easier to answer those at any of the stations. So if you have any general project questions, I'd be happy to answer them now. Yes?
Who decides where the homeowner has to tap into the pipe?
That's a great question. So the question is, who decides where the homeowner has to tap into the pipe? And so Kelly referenced that a little bit. When we design the project, we take our best guess. We study where your septic system's located on the property. And we kind of look at the site characteristics. However, we do send out that notification form prior to construction, which is really a survey, and ask the resident if they have an opinion on where they want the connection to go. And a lot of people will come up to us and say, we don't know where it should go. Okay, well, we're happy to come out and have staff come meet with you and look at your property and try to help work you through that and help maybe advise. But a lot of people, perhaps have a tree they really love, right? We don't want to go anywhere near that tree. Or we just paved our driveway, so we certainly don't want to rip up our driveway. Or, you know what, we want to pave our driveway, so put it under my driveway. Those are some of the various discussions we have relative to that. So ultimately, you get final say. We'll make an educated guess if we don't hear otherwise. Yes?
Call for that meeting.
Excuse me?
To arrange that meeting, who would you call?
So you can reach out to Barnstable through Water Resources at barnstable.gov. That will come to our staff, and we'll assign somebody.
On
They'll
the-
set up a meeting. Yep.
On the connection form, there's also contact information for our connection program manager as well.
Yes, sir.
You put a stake on my property
No, you're asking
with
questions now.
with an orange flag on
Pink.
it. Is that?
That is not your, okay, so the question is, there was a stake located on your property that had some orange flagging or pink flagging on it, something like that. The question is that your sewer connection location? No. So what that is from is that's ultimately a remnant of a control point from when the surveyor was mapping the area. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that doesn't mean that's where the connection's going to go. When we come into construction, actually, we end up marking them in advance, and it'll be clear at that time where the location is. Yes.
I'm concerned about these loans, the 30-year loan with the town. If you sell your house, does it have to be paid off or is it assumable?
Yeah. So the question is, if you finance your assessment on your tax bill over the course of 30 years, does it have to be paid off if you transfer title? And the answer is yes.
Well, no.
It's non-assumable?
So a lien will be placed on the property, and depending, a lien will be placed on the property if you still have a sewer assessment to pay off. And it can get wrapped into a future property owner purchasing the home, but it's dependent on your individual mortgage and mortgage company. So there is an option to.
If it's a cash sale, can a cash buyer assume it?
Yes, they can.
They can
Yes.
assume the
Yep.
loan where it stands?
Yep.
Okay.
And any other specific questions like that, I would just have you contact the tax collector's office ahead of a sale. But yes, that is possible.
And what's the story on the Aqua loan? Is that assumable also, or?
So the question is, what about the Aqua Fund? Is that assumable if you were to sell your property? That I would refer you to the county. I don't want to answer for them. I mean, I've had the conversations about the assessment with our tax collector's office and our finance director, but I would refer you to the Aqua Fund directly to question their process for their loans.
Well, I've already gotten a price on my house, and it's like $30,000. And the Aqua loan only goes up to $18,000. So then does the town finance the difference over 18? The town will not, it's one loan or another.
Yeah, so they're actually two completely separate things that you're talking about.
The
So
Aqua is for 20 years, the town is for 30.
If the Aqua Fund is for the construction cost, and the town financing is actually for the cost of your assessment only, which are two different costs.
So you could get two loans.
Yeah, correct.
You could.
And there are other programs for construction loans as well, as Kelly alluded to. I know, like, for instance, Cape Cod 5 has a sewer loan program that if there was a delta between what the county can offer.
Things that are assumable.
Yep,
'Cause
understood.
I don't want to sell my house and then have to pay this huge amount of money to a betterment I won't even get betterment from. So,
Understood.
you know.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. But it's a lot of equity.
That's a fantastic question. So the question is, if prior to sewer service being available, your septic system happens to fail, do you have to replace your septic system? So the answer is maybe, but the health department does try to work with individual property owners who are in that circumstance. And we've had a number of those actually occur on projects. Maybe a number is overstating it. We've had some of those occur on projects. And usually what will happen is the Board of Health will work with the property owner to allow for kind of a minimal solution. Maybe they'll just recommend that you pump more frequently to get you to that time frame, or maybe they'll just have you do a minor repair rather than a full repair to get, depending upon how far out you are from when the connection will occur. But ultimately, they are working with residents, and ultimately you have to consult the health department to kind of get that answer of your individual property. But yes, that's a great question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, from what I learned in previous meetings, if you live in a watershed area, you have to get the new nitrogen removal septic system, is that correct?
No.
Oh, I thought that was.
Yeah, so there are recent regulations that were passed by Mass DEP, which require communities that do not have a watershed permit and have properties in nitrogen-sensitive areas, which this would be, every property has to install individual innovative alternative septic systems. However, because we have the comprehensive wastewater management plan, and because we're implementing it, and because we're in the process of securing a watershed permit, that is not a mandate in the community.
Okay, that's what I've heard from you, well, that's good to know. So if you're not getting sewered and you live in a watershed area, you don't have to upgrade right away, is that correct?
As of right now, that is correct.
Okay, my question is, because I'm sure a lot of people in this room have the Title V system, which we were led to believe was fine. Obviously, we come to find out it's obsolete at this point in time. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but are we gonna at some point in time find out these new nitrogen removal systems are gonna become obsolete? Because that would be kind of tough.
Well, we're not proposing nitrogen removal systems. We're proposing sewers. And that's the reason we're doing that.
But if you're not in the sewer system, which is over 50%, at some point in time, you're gonna have to get the nitrogen removal system.
Not necessarily. That's not currently a mandate.
No.
Yep. That's not currently a mandate.
Very good.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the pump station you referenced on Mark Road or the
Yep.
only one?
It's the only one in this project. Yes.
Phase one, there will be
No, there are more in phase one. So, but in this particular project, the Phinneys Lane sewer expansion that serves the 580 parcels, there are none in this contract other than the Marks Path. We have built and are in the process of building other pump stations right now. As you know, the large building at the intersection of 28 and Phinneys Lane is one of our foundational pump stations for the program. We're building 2 on Chute Flying Hill right now, and there are a couple more under construction kind of out in the western part of town. There's one under construction at Mother's Park right now. So we are building other pump stations, but there's no...
where they will be if you do not see them in progress at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean, we have, until we have the project designed to a point where we say that's where it's going, we have guesses and we have schematic guesses on that, but we generally refrain from trying to say that's where a pump station's going to go until we're fairly certain for obvious reasons. Yes, sir.
Has Barnstable considered the $10,000 connection fee? If a lot of, businesses will say, pay now and you'll get some sort of discount or anything like that, or is there going to be any incentives?
Yeah, so the question is relative to the assessment, and it's not a connection fee, it's a sewer assessment. It's effectively a betterment for the property, right? So think of it that way. The question is, have we thought about some sort of pay now and you get a better rate, so to speak? No, because we can't really do that under state law, is my understanding. It ultimately is cheaper to pay it right away because we do finance it. So we will charge, I think it's 2% above what our borrowing rate is. So it is ultimately more cost effective, but you got to come up with a chunk of change. So, yes, sir.
Okay. Up to now, you worked on public streets.
Yep.
Okay. Now you're talking going into a lot of private streets.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need any special approval?
Yeah. So it's a great question. So the question is, up until now, all the projects have been in public roads, and this project has a number of private roads. So over the course of the last 2 years, the town has been, through the town council, has been taking easement rights within the private roads that this project is within. So the town has gone through a program of laying out the roadways and taking rights to install utilities, not to take the roadway, but to install utilities within the road. So every private road within this project will have gone through that process prior to starting construction. So we have the rights to do it and the ability to do it as we were able to take those rights on via eminent domain. Yes, sir. I'll come back to you next.
Do you have any protection to prevent backup going back into some house if something happens to the system?
Yeah, so the collection systems, so there's a few things there. So the collection systems, again, go by gravity, right? So the flow comes into it, it flows to ultimately a low point. Probably the most vulnerable locations are ultimately near those low points, but it's very rare that there is an issue at those low points. Ultimately, it would be the result of a mechanical failure. And again, as we just talked about, there's only one pump station in this project, and those would be where those low points occur. There are cases where, for whatever reason, a a connection point would get clogged, right? So flushable wipes, so to speak, not so flushable actually, and they do end up getting clogged in pipes at times, and ultimately in our pump stations, they end up clogging our pump stations as well. So there are ways to kind of prevent a clog on your property, but certainly through good maintenance and through oversight of our system, it's very rare that something like that would occur. Yes, ma'am. I'm coming to you next.
One,
Sorry.
you mentioned the grinders, if
Yeah.
those are needed on property.
Yeah.
Are those something that the homeowner is responsible for?
It is.
Or is that part of the town?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So the question was about the grinder pumps that were mentioned, and the question was, is the homeowner responsible for those grinder pumps, or is the town responsible for those grinder pumps? It's a little bit of both. So the policy of the town has been for some time to, when a sewer expansion project occurs that requires somebody to connect and they ultimately need a grinder pump to connect, the town buys the first grinder pump and gives it to the contractor, and then the contractor installs it. The property owner is responsible for hiring the contractor and doing all the work on their property, but we buy the unit, which is about $6,000. So we recognize that as, a cost, right? So the town does incorporate that into the project cost and buys it for the property owner. Once we hand it over, it is your appliance, so to speak, moving forward, and you're responsible for maintenance. And if it ultimately needs to be replaced, 10, 15, 20 years from now, you would be responsible for that at that time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And
Okay.
my second question
Yes.
was about
I'm coming, I
underground
promise.
utilities.
Yes.
Like on Sunnywood,
Yeah.
all of our utilities, electric, cable, and so forth are underground.
Yeah.
So how would that be affected during the construction phase?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the question is about underground utilities. How will they be affected during construction? So during the design process, we map the underground utilities, the known underground utilities. And we undertake, prior to commencing construction, some additional test pits in the area. So we'll come out and dig and actually expose utilities where there's some uncertainty as to where they exist to try to minimize impacting, especially a critical utility such as like an electric line. Ultimately, if a utility does get damaged, the contractor would be required to fix it as immediately as possible. And I promised I'd come back to you.
No, I just had a quick question about fertilization.
Yeah.
On your chart, it showed that 9% of the nitrogens come from fertilizer.
Yeah.
And you can drive around here, whether you're on the water or in roads, and you can tell every single house that fertilizes their lawn. Is there any way that the town could get more interactive in finding or imposing some sort of action on the people who continue to fertilize? Just to help prevent algae everywhere where there's water.
Yeah, so the question is about fertilizers. Is there anything the town can do to try to minimize the use of fertilizers? The town does have a fertilizer regulation. It's very difficult to enforce, and to date, it's been very difficult to be effective with enforcement of that regulation. It's ultimately not a regulation through DPW, so we don't have oversight of it, but it is a difficult, and every community, frankly, is struggling with the fertilizer side of this. As the pie chart showed, it is 9%. That doesn't mean it's nothing. It is a small portion of the contribution, but there is something there. And frankly, folks are going to need to take it upon themselves to make better decisions. I understand that.
Can the town ban fertilizer?
The question is, can the town ban fertilizer? The town could make that choice if they so chose to, but currently the regulations that are in place basically outline how fertilizer can be used, and you're supposed to have approved people assist you with that and stuff like that. So, yes, ma'am.
If someone's considering a new house, building a new house construction, and they're at this point, would they not be able to finish and to move in until?
Yeah, we actually had that occur on Strawberry Hill Road when we were building that project. Somebody started construction on their new residence right as we were starting construction on the sewer, and it takes time for it to be completed and to be able to allow the connection. And they ultimately were in a situation where they did have to install a septic system. So that is possible if a new construction's occurring. Or yeah, I mean, they wanted to occupy the dwelling, right? So you're not able to occupy the dwelling without a wastewater solution. So unfortunately, that's where the timing was, and they had renters in that particular situation. So they were in a situation where they did have to make that investment. Yes.
Is there a plan to take video of the homes prior to construction starting? So in that case that there might be damage made by the construction?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is there plans to take pictures or videos of the homes prior to construction? We do require pictures and videos to be conducted by our contractor pre-construction. We do not enter people's properties and take pictures of your property, but we do take pictures of the road and the areas that are going to be impacted by the construction. So certainly if you're concerned about your individual property, I would recommend taking your own pictures in advance. But we do have photographic and visual and video evidence of what was there prior to commencing construction. We just don't go onto people's properties and take pictures of their property. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you. In terms of the actual installation of the sewer connection.
Yep.
So let's assume that work's been done, so you're technically ready.
Yep.
What part of the overall project needs to be complete before yours can be fired up and working?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is what percentage of the project needs to be completed prior to somebody being able to connect? And it's a little bit of a nuanced question. So ultimately, from a technical perspective, from where your home is all the way to where there's an existing pipe would need to be completed before you could technically connect. However, there is the nuance there that we will not be mandating connection through the Board of Health until sometime after the pipe is connected, because ultimately we do that kind of in slugs. We don't necessarily do it. We're completed with the road and then you immediately get notification. There's a couple reasons for that. One is really financial. There is the assessment, and we do need to justify the assessment. So we need to allocate all the costs associated with the construction of the project and the individual road. So we are talking about opportunities to potentially start connections sooner than 2029 on roads that are earlier on in the project, but we have not worked through that particular matter with this project yet. However, if you do get into a situation where there's a failing septic system and the pipe is functional, we have made exceptions. We've allowed people to connect, and then we've dealt with the assessment side at a later date. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You get a lot of vibration when digging into a roadway. Okay. What happens if the foundation is damaged?
Yep, so ultimately the question was if there's damage to the property or the foundation from vibrations caused by the construction activity. The contractor protects the town through our contract, and so ultimately the property owner would have to go to the contractor's insurance and file a claim with their insurance. Yes, ma'am. Yes, so the question is an assessment or a betterment the same thing? It is the same thing. We refer to ours as assessments. Betterments are kind of the same thing, although there's some nuance, there's some legal nuance there. So they're effectively the same thing. So there's that cost of the sewer assessment, it's capped at $10,000, and then there's... The assessment is a cost. So the town is charging the property owner up to $10,000 for access or the betterment caused by having the sewer available. So it's basically the fee, the charge is charging the property owner for access to that pipe.
And, you have a map up there with all the white area.
Yep.
Is that a large area that's never going to be sewered?
You're going back to the plan map that we had? Yeah, so the question is, what about the large white area? Yes, those are areas that are not currently identified to be sewered in the plan. So you can't see it here, but this area here in Hyannis and some of Barnstable Village is already sewered. It's gray, you can't see it on the map right now. But there is a large part of the community that is not going to be sewered through the program, and ultimately going back to the early slides about achieving those total maximum daily loads that we need to achieve. It's ultimately a big math problem. We have to remove a certain amount of nitrogen from the environment, and we have to do it in as efficient a manner as possible. And so there were some decisions made about where the highest priority was, given how groundwater flows from a particular property, as well as how expensive is it going to be to actually sewer those areas, right? So there are a number of decisions that go into why a particular property was identified or not. Yes, sir.
Yes, so you get the up to $10,000 assessment.
Yep,
That's not the hookup, is that correct?
correct.
The hookup could be 10,000.
Really, I don't throw numbers around because it really depends upon your property situation. If you have a home that is very close to the roadway, it's going to be a lot lower than if you have a home that's really far set back, or if your pipe comes out the back versus the front, or if you have asphalt in the way or not. So we really can't give an accurate number. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, in the picture it shows the stub and a clean out. Are they at grade? No, in this book, yeah.
Oh, in the book? Okay.
Are they at grade or below grade or above grade?
The clean out?
The clean out and
Yeah.
the stub.
Yeah, so the stubs are below grade. So yeah, the connection point will be anywhere from 3 to 10 feet down, depending upon your situation. We actually do provide a vertical pipe so that you can kind of connect into any one of those areas. And then when the contractor connects to that, they'll leave a clean out to grade. So they'll leave a cap at grade or just below grade that can be accessed if we ever need to clean the line for something like that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what do you anticipate for the lifespan of the Bears's Way treatment plant? Do you need right now, in anticipation of all this work, to build another one?
So the question is, what do we anticipate for the life of the Versus Way, the treatment plant on Versus Way? The treatment plant has an extended useful life. Like we aren't concerned about the life of the treatment plant. We're actually in the process of going through a significant upgrade to the treatment plant to remove additional nitrogen.
Do you think you need to build another one?
We don't anticipate needing to build another treatment plant. Yes, ma'am.
What is the construction sequence for the homeowner? I wanna, so if you connect, you get connected, but then you can't turn the sewer on yet. You have to keep your septic system in the back, and so that would have to get decommissioned at a different time?
Yeah, so no. So ultimately, once you get the notification that you can connect, is when you would do everything on your property. What we do is we put the pipe in the road, we leave the pipe to your property line, basically, and that's left there with a stake, and we have notes as to where it is if the stake somehow disappears, right? And then ultimately, once you're told you need to connect, then you would decommission your septic system and make the connection and do all that at once. Yes?
Are there relevant components that we're gonna have to pay as a homeowner when we have to connect to the sewer?
Yeah, so the question is, are there building permits that you're going to need to pay for? The answer is maybe. So the maybe would be if you need to make a change to your plumbing indoors for whatever reason. That's not typically necessary, but in some cases folks choose to reroute their plumbing to come out the front or the back or in a more convenient location. There would need to be a plumbing permit for that. And for properties that have grinder pumps, there will be an electrical inspection required. So that wouldn't be necessarily a building permit, but it's an electrical permit. The town's DPW does have a sewer connection permit, which is part of your contractor. The contractor ultimately has to pull. There is a fee associated with that. I think it's $300 or something like that. And ultimately what that pays for is our oversight of the installation to make sure it's done properly. Yes.
First, two questions. What's the difference between an ejection pump and a grinder pump? Or are they the same?
They're effectively the same. What's the question? The question is, what's the difference between an ejector pump and a grinder pump? Typically the ejector pump would be inside the basement and would pump up. And a grinder pump is just a different technology of type of pump. They ultimately eject. They ultimately pump, right? The grinder pumps make sure they grind up the material very well so that they don't get clogged. And so the model that we specify is very good at doing that. The model we specify is outside. There are ones that can go inside. The ones that we use are outside.
And what happens when the electric goes out?
Yep, when the electric goes out, if you don't have a generator, the pump obviously doesn't function. It does require electricity. There is, and we do have a little figure here. Where is it? This is ultimately what the pump looks like. And what you see on the surface is this cover. This is all below grade. But there is about 70 gallons of storage in here. It's not a lot. I wouldn't recommend taking long showers at that point, but you can still flush the toilet and use some water until the power comes on. Obviously, if there's an extended power outage like we just had, you're going to need to start thinking about the fact that you have an appliance, realistically, that you need to think about the use of.
Will that stop it from backing into your house?
If you flush too much beyond the storage, it would not. It would start backing up. Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That utilities were gonna be mapped out.
Yep.
So with our water being a utility, how are those pipes gonna be used during this process, if at all?
So when we design the projects, we map out all the utilities that are in the road, the known locations of them. We also do pull the information on the location of your service connection. And so this project does not propose to impact service connections except for some of them that are located within the Hyannis water system. On a couple of roadways, we will be upgrading the water main. But the preponderance of the properties, there will be no impact to water, right? So the existing water, especially in the COMM water district, will not be upgraded as part of the project because it's a separate entity. But we ultimately will take care to ensure that the connection is a distance away from your water service, because we try to keep wastewater away from water for good technical reasons. And that's how we'll proceed with that. Does that answer your question?
Not really.
Okay, so what was the question?
I'm more concerned about the age of the pipe.
Okay.
So if you're assessing the property
Yep,
for this sewer,
yep.
is there any thought to, at the same time, having a collaboration with the water department to look at the pipes for the water?
So we are. So
Instead, if you don't want to mix wastewater with water going into your house, is there?
yeah, so they're two distinct pipes, right? The services on the property are owned by the property owner, similar to the services here, are owned by the property owners. Once it enters the property, there's kind of that nuance there. There are some roads within this project that we will be replacing the water mains and upgrading them due to age. We didn't necessarily go over that in this presentation, but I think Longview Drive is one of them. There's a couple of areas where the water main is aging or undersized, and we will be upgrading it as part of it. So we have thought about that. We aren't replacing services to people's buildings as part of this project. Similarly, we're not installing the service for your sewer connection as part of this project. Those are the property owner's obligations. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned a sewer bill,
Yep.
and how does that work?
Yeah, so the sewer question is, how does the sewer bill work? So once you connect to sewer, right, we've inspected this connection, we've signed off on the connection, we'll notify the Water Pollution Control Division, the wastewater plant, and they will set up an account. And really what they'll do is you'll use the property's information from the water purveyors, and they get the water use data from the water purveyors for each property. And that will inform, there's a rate basically that's set based on how much water you use on the property, and then a bill will be generated based off that. It's the same frequency as you get your water bill. Yeah, because we get the information from them, so we turn the bills around after we've got that information. Yes?
What confidence do you have that the capacity of the waste treatment can handle this project?
It can. We're confident.
What percent? I mean, you're gonna have to go to some of the top sooner or later, right?
Yeah, and so as part of our plan, we are upgrading our treatment plant currently, really to address nitrogen issues. Not issues, but to improve the treatment capacity of the nitrogen. Bring it from an average of 6 milligrams per liter to 3 milligrams per liter, so improve it by 100%. In later phases of our plan, we have identified the need to expand our effluent disposal capacity. That is not a problem at this time. So it's not a problem with this project. and we are working our way through that project, that portion of the project, and we'll be identifying solutions in the near term. Yes, sir.
Should any old utilities be replaced in the same trench as you're putting the new sewer line in, or is there, some separation at that?
Yeah, so the question is, can any old utilities be installed within the sewer trench as we're doing that? The answer is really kind of no, for a couple of reasons. One, you always want separation to be able to access the utilities. Certainly understanding in this project specifically, there are some very narrow roads. There won't be a lot of separation in some cases, but we generally, to install sewer, would use kind of specialized equipment. It's usually larger equipment than you need to install like a gas main, for instance. And the gas main, for instance, would be installed by National Grid. So in many cases, that's not necessarily an option. In some cases, we will replace the water mains. It'll be done kind of as a separate mobilization, so to speak. So they'll do the sewer installation, and then they would come back with a different crew to do the water, just because it's more efficient for the contractor, frankly. And they wouldn't put it in the same trench anyway. So ultimately, there usually is not two utilities going in at the same time.
And I was thinking in particular, electric service.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know there's been a discussion about that, given the storm we recently had, right? That's not currently contemplated in the project. Yes, sir.
The outfall pipe for the wastewater plant on Versus Way, where's that outfall pipe?
There is not an outfall pipe at the wastewater treatment plant. The wastewater treatment plant discharges to groundwater, similar to how a septic system leaching field would. Yep. Yes, sir.
I have sort of a twofold cost question.
Yep.
Kelly, I heard you mention something I hadn't heard before about the assessment is 10,000 max, but there may be some use cases where it's a little less than that. Could you?
Yeah, so I actually alluded to that a little bit with your earlier question about timing. So we do need to kind of go through and calculate the costs of extending the sewers to each particular road. And in some cases, the total cost divided by the number of users may result in a number that's less than 10,000. In a lot of cases, it has happened. It has happened. So with the Strawberry Hill project and with the Route 28 East project, the first two projects that we did, it was less than 10,000. And the reason why was because ultimately those projects are going to benefit 10,000 people. So it was divided over a very large amount of parcels. As we move into neighborhoods and roads where we have to do construction for 10 properties, it's divided by a smaller number. So it's likely that the assessments for this project will be 10,000, but we don't know that for sure.
Okay. And then the second question, somebody else had asked about potential costs overall.
Yeah.
Do we have any data to date about sort of average costs from beginning to end?
Yeah, and I really hate going down this road because everybody's property is very different.
Yes.
She mentioned her property. I've been to her property. We discussed her connection actually. She has two buildings on her property, and one's 300 feet from the road or something like that, right? So it results in a very long connection and a lot of cost, right? We've had properties on Chute Flying Hill Road, which are, 20 to 30 feet away from the pipe that have been $5,000 to $6,000. We've had some that have been significantly more than that. So it really is imperative on the property owner to do their own research, contact multiple contractors. I really can't reinforce that enough.
So let me just ask the question one other way.
Yeah.
Do you know the information, but you're not
I don't.
wanting to
Nope,
convey it?
I don't. No, we have got some snapshot data from the Aqua Fund for the Strawberry Hill project. And again, it's very apples and oranges to a lot of these properties, but we've seen ranges from 6,000 to 10,000 to 12,000. But I'm confident there will be some that are more than that, and I'm confident there will be some that are less than that.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You said initially that 78% of the nitrogen is causing the problem, and everybody here is causing the problem, but your map says that only certain properties are doing it.
Correct.
And you have a cost of each of those people that are impacted has to pay. Why isn't that cost handed out to everybody else?
So it's ultimately a policy decision. right? So I didn't make that decision. It's ultimately a policy decision that was made as a way to manage the financing of the program. The town, every taxpayer in the town does pay for this program. And there is a portion of the general fund that is contributing to this program. Our very talented finance director recently gave the town council an update on the financing of the program, which I'd encourage you to go find on the website and watch if you're interested in how the program is financed. But ultimately, and again, I go back to it's a big math problem as to how much nitrogen we need to remove. Everybody's septic system is polluting the environment. We ultimately don't need to remove every bit of nitrogen. We need to remove a large portion of it. And that's how we ultimately came up with the plan that we have.
I understand the plan, I just don't understand how the cost was evenly out to everybody else.
Yep, and so I mean, there's some logic behind that. That was debated by the council at the time where the decision was made. Ultimately there was a sewer assessment ordinance which was passed by the town council in 2021, and it was felt that that was the fairest way to do it at the time. Yes, ma'am.
Along those lines, how much will the wastewater system contribution, it's currently at 5%, how much?
That's a regional number, just so that's Cape-wide for all the wastewater treatment plants, the amount of nitrogen entering. So the question is, how much will the wastewater treatment plant contribute? Yeah, so part of our math for the big TMDL problem accounts for the additional nitrogen that's going to come to the plant, enter into the environment, and go into the embayments, and we have to sewer additional areas in the areas down gradient of that to offset that, as well as make enhancements to our treatment capacity, our treatment process at the plant, which is under construction. So we're reducing the treatment capabilities by half, which is part of that big math problem to make sure that we deal with just that issue. Yes, sir.
If you have sprinkler systems that you deal with a water bill,
Yeah.
you'd have to have two separate meters?
Yeah, so there is each water purveyor has a different process, but you can install what's called a deduct meter, which is a meter on your sprinkler system, basically, which will deduct the amount of water you use from irrigation from your sewer bill, because it would add up very quickly if that was not done. I think it's a fairly nominal number. I don't know what the cost is. The water purveyors charge the property owner a number to have that installed, and they have a specification that has to be done, but frankly, it probably is worth it pretty quickly. Yes?
Can we choose to use an AI system instead of doing town sewer?
The question is, can we choose to use an AI system instead of connecting to town sewer? And the answer is no. Because it does not have the same removal capacity as a sewer does.
Okay, but it said, I thought this meeting was going to be about some properties would be.
There is another meeting that is proposed next week, held by the Board of Health and the ad hoc CWMP committee, which is proposing certain areas in town consider innovative alternative septic systems be required. That is not this meeting. But that is a proposal that is being considered by those groups at the moment, and there is a meeting next Monday at Town Hall to discuss that.
Great, thank you.
Any additional questions? Yes, ma'am.
If we connect to the system, how does that affect a homeowner's real estate?
It's a really good question, and I am by no means an expert in that area. All I have been told is it does improve your real estate value. How much? I don't know. So I would consult a realtor on that, but I mean, we have been told that it does improve your real estate value. All right, well, thanks everybody for their attendance. I appreciate it. And if you have questions on your property, by all means, feel free to stay.